So there's this woman named Tina Peters. She is closely linked to Mike Lindell. In fact, she gave Mike Lindell the voter data that he used to parade around and claim fraud when there absolutely wasn't any voter fraud. She's a county clerk, Tina Peters is. This is her right here. This is Tina Peters on screen if you haven't seen her before. But I want to kind of give you a little bit of lead up into this story of her facing a brand new lawsuit because it is deeply entertaining. To lead into that story, let me reintroduce you to Mike Lindell. This clip is from early February 2022, and at this point in time, Lindell was coming off the hinges, if he was ever on the hinges, about the fact that Fox News isn't talking about the election conspiracy as much as they were before. Or at least at this moment in time, they weren't talking about the election conspiracies as much. And he was deeply upset by that fact. Listen to how he reacted to the fact that he felt like Fox News was kind of cutting him out.
Trolls that are on my Facebook, and they go, there's no evidence, Mike, give it up. Just go over to Lindell TV and go to the number Lindell TV 2, and you're going to see Garland on there pouring out the evidence from Georgia.
For what it's worth, he does have a section, Lindell does, on his website of election fraud evidence. It's not evidence. It's press releases that Mike Lindell wrote and sent out to various different news stations about voter fraud, about, elections being stolen or ballot, whatever. No evidence actually presented. What he presents us is articles that he wrote about the idea that the election was stolen without backing any of that stuff up. So there isn't actually evidence. There's just claims that he made. That's it.
And it won't be funny because then when Fox says we're all American, when Fox calls the United States of America, all the people liars, and our great president Donald Trump a liar, we say, well, Fox, here, why don't you run this tape on your show instead of Sean Hannity and run it and watch the stuff come out? Maybe we should get our cyber guys, Brandon, that looked at all the evidence to hook up our stream to Fox's. Like they all attack Lindell TV all the time. We can attack. Can you imagine? This is Sean Hannity. All of a sudden, breaking news right out of Georgia. We can't even put the evidence pouring in Arizona, pouring in Wisconsin. And Fox you'd have the Murdochs going, oh no, what are we going to do? The truth is out. We're the liars.
This guy seems unhinged right now. This is normal, actually. I've watched speech after speech after speech from this dude where he stands up there and says and does the same stuff. This is not abnormal. It seems weird. It's really right in character. He is talking about hacking Fox News and laughing about the idea of it, running false information about how the election was supposedly stolen when it wasn't. Jesus Christ, dude. So as most people know about this guy, if you're watching this 5 years in the future and you're unfamiliar with the story, I'll just give you the basics of it. Most people know that Lindell ran this cyber symposium a while back, right? Lindell actually did release private information a while back. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a list of voter data that was released. It was a list of dead voters, people that claimed that this list of voters were dead and their ballots were submitted or whatever. And BBC actually went around to the people on the list and asked them, knocked on the door and said, is John Smith in? To see if they really were dead or if this list was real at all. The list was of real voters who really voted, but they weren't dead. So where did that information come from? It was leaked voter data. Tina Peters, this woman right here, leaked private voter data to Mike Lindell. She was a county clerk running elections in Mesa County, Colorado. She leaked private voter data to Mike Lindell, and that's where they got a lot of the voter data for the supposed evidence that they passed around of dead voters and all that stuff when they simply weren't even dead. There was no widespread voter fraud. but they simply can't give up on the idea. Anyway, so Lindell holds this cyber symposium. I think he held one in June of 2021, August 2021, and then another September 2022. I don't remember. Anyway, he invited Tina Peters, of all people, to come speak at his cyber symposium, which is basically trying to prove that there was voter fraud when there simply was not. Check out Tina Peters' appearance at Mike Lindell's cyber symposium.
Yesterday, I got an order from the Secretary of State that she was going to invade my elections department today. And guess what? When I was on a plane to come see you kind folks and to talk to you out there, guess what they did? They provided a search warrant and raided my office. We don't know what they were doing in there because for several hours...
I know what they were doing in there. They were looking for evidence that Tina Peters leaked private voter data to Mike Lindell. And guess what? They found that. They found it. They found the evidence that she did this and then charged her with 7 felonies. Oh, my God.
Hours, they wouldn't even let my chief deputy clerk, who is the acting clerk for Mesa County when I'm absent, would not even let her observe what the Secretary of State and Dominion were doing in my office.
Alone for several hours in the voting room.
Alone.
Such a victim. Oh, my gosh. So victimized by the man, right? This woman literally committed 7 felonies, and she's the victim here. She's the victim. Absolutely absurd. I'm sorry. Yeah, I put down August 2022 by mistake. This is August 10th, 2021, not 2022. Ignore the date in the very opening sequence here. We actually, as it turns out, we have video of Tina Peters being arrested, if you can believe it. Check this out.
Let go of me! Let go of me! Let go of me! Oh no! Let go of me! It hurts! Let go of me! Give me my teeth!
Did you see that? She's kicking at them. Do you know what would have happened to her if she had been black? More than likely, they would have at least charged her with resisting arrest, bare minimum. One of the most privileged people in the country, with one of the most privileged positions. And she's kicking at the police as they're arresting her. And what do? They let her out on bail the very next day. We'll get there. Keep watching.
Oh, stop it! Sorry. No, let go of me! Yes, you are, Caleb. Give me my key to my car. Give me my key to my car. Give me my key to my car. Give it to me. Give me my key. Step outside. Take my purse.
I'm sorry, man. That's what she gets. I have absolutely zero sympathy whatsoever. Zero. She violated the private information of so many people by handing it over to Mike Lindell. She compromised the integrity of our elections. There is so much wrong with who she is and what she has done. It's disgusting. I can't even stand it. She deserved every bit of this. Every bit of it. The sad part about this situation is that everybody isn't treated with the level of dignity and respect that she was given by those police officers. If it had been anybody else, they would have thrown her on the ground and put her face on the concrete. They would have charged her with resisting arrest and obstruction of justice and any other thing they could have thrown at her. I've seen it happen a billion times. I have no sympathy. None. For this woman. So she goes on Steve Bannon's show to talk about how traumatized she was by that whole thing. Oh my gosh. So mistreated. Tina Peters, county clerk, committed 7 felonies and stole private voter data and leaked it to Mike Lindell. And she's the victim. She's mistreated. Listen to this.
We're glad to have you on, not handcuffed, normally like you are. So Tina, tell our audience. Tell our audience what's the news. Unshackled Tina Peters which they're going to.
This is only a few days later. I'm not sure exactly how many days. Maybe a night. I think she said she's only in there for one night. I'm not really sure, but it wasn't long enough. I can tell you that.
I realized they made a mistake. That they should have never unshackled you, because now you're off the chain. Tell us what the news is, Tina.
Oh my goodness! I'll tell you what. I still have the bruise. It's been almost a week. I still have the bruises on my arm where they manhandled me.
You mean where she struggled? It was her struggling. We saw what happened, clear as day. We have video evidence of it. She was struggling and fighting and kicking at them.
But I still have the bruise. It's been almost a week. I still have the bruises on my arm where they manhandled me. And what I'm putting out there is Colorado needs a Secretary of State who will put people over political theater.
That's right. She ran for Secretary of State after getting arrested in her position of county clerk for leaking private voter data. Luckily, she lost. We have the results of those elections now. Of course, she claimed fraud when she lost. We'll get there. Just bear with me. Keep listening.
Prioritize them over politics. And Colorado deserves a Secretary of State who will stand up to the Biden administration that wants to run our country into the ground with nationalized elections. And Steve, that's why today I'm announcing I'm running for Colorado Secretary of State.
By the way, Secretary of State, I didn't know what relevance that position would have had, but as it turns out, the Secretary of State directly controls elections, pretty much. Like, they administrate the elections and get the voting machines and the whole nine yards. They control everything about the elections. If she had actually successfully become Secretary of State, it would have been a real mess for Colorado, for the country. It would have been really, really bad. Mike Lindell actually sponsored her run for Secretary of State by donating $800,000 to her campaign or something like that, which is actually against the law, unless he's a close personal friend, which he admitted on camera he's not. You're not allowed to give more than like $65 to a political campaign in Colorado for Secretary of State or whatever else. I don't know if she ever faced ethics violations for that or not. She certainly should have. Either way, she lost the election, so I'm happy with that. According to Colorado law, she's supposed to pay back twice the amount she received in donations if she's found guilty of ethical violations like that. So hypothetically, she's supposed to pay $1.6 million in fines for taking $800,000 from Mike Lindell. I don't know if she's ever going to face justice for that specific thing or not, but at least she lost. At least she lost. Just a couple days after that last interview, mid-February 2022, she goes on this show, Conservative Daily Podcast, to talk about going to jail. Listen to this.
When you have the opposition that you're getting from the top, this is coming from D.C., Joe.
Yeah.
And I want to say right now, too, that I'm not depressed. I've never thought of killing myself. If some crazy accident happens, I'm a very good driver. I have a perfect driving record.
Yeah.
So never thought of harming myself. So if anything happens to me, then I want people to know that it was not an accident, as grim as that might say.
She is obsessed with being a martyr and with being a victim. She committed 7 felonies and was charged for that. And the fact that she was charged for breaking the law makes her believe, or at least pretend to believe, that she's the victim in this situation. Kind of reminds me of Jussie Smollett's appearance in court. I don't know if you guys remember this. March 10th, 2022. Dude faked a hate crime against himself and then stood up in court and said he's innocent and he's never considered hurting himself or anything.
Do you have any questions?
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I am not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal.
Yeah, cringy. Oh my God, is that cringy? Has the same vibes, right? Same vibes between Jussie Smollett and Tina Peters. Just terrible. Just terrible, dude. Before we continue, I just wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. Or you can check out my Telltale Unfiltered channel. I go through long-form, unhinged sermons from all kinds of people, from Hank Kunneman to Greg Locke to Jehovah's Witnesses. So give it a look. Links are in the description. Okay, now back to the video. Well, the Tina Peters saga is not over yet, because this roller coaster just keeps on riding, baby. Check this one out. Late July 2022. She comes out, I think this is on, this is Steve Bannon's show. She comes out and says this.
This was a setup from the beginning. But when they saw that I had such a following and that I was going to win this, they front-loaded ballots. Now, if you read report number 3, and Jeffrey O'Donnell, the author of that report.
That was not me, by the way. That's part of the video, the ding. She lost the election. She lost her bid for Secretary of State. And what does she do? She claims they, quote-unquote, front-loaded ballots. This is what the MAGA movement does. Either they win or you cheated. That's the whole strategy, and it seems to be working for them. That's what Tina Peters is doing right now. She lost, so everybody else cheated. I don't even think she's running against Democrats in that race. I think she was running, this is a primary, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, this is a primary. She wasn't even running against Democrats. She ran against Pam Anderson, Mike O'Donnell, and of course her, Tina Peters. Those are the 3 Republicans in the primary race, which took place on June 28th. Now Pam Anderson is going to run against Jenna Griswold November 8th, 2022, to determine who becomes Secretary of State. So Tina Peters was not accusing Democrats of voter fraud. She was accusing Republicans, other Republicans, of voter fraud. They live in a delusional reality. Seriously.
You will see that this is exactly what they did this time. They had to take me out. And why would a judge appointed by our radical baby killing laws, Jared Polis, why would a judge appointed by him issue 2 arrest warrants, 2 in 1 week?
I wonder why. What could have caused it, huh? No explanation. We'll never know why 2 arrest warrants were issued for Tina Peters. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. No idea.
This past week. They want to take me out, and because they know that I know what's going on in the machine speak.
That's it. That's it. It's not that she broke laws. It's that they know that she knows what's going on, and they've got to make her quiet. They got to shut her up, so they're going to put her in jail because, people aren't allowed to talk when they're in jail, of course. Because they don't have lawyers that have Twitter accounts connected to them. Because sending her to jail doesn't make a massive media mess. It's ridiculous, dude. The logic that they use in the first place is flawed from the ground up. They just want to make themselves into victims. That's it. They want to be viewed as victims. Absolutely nuts, dude. Okay, so that brings us to our latest clip. This is early September 2022. You'll never believe where she was. She just walked out of the courtroom where she was facing the charges. She was dealing with the charges that were brought against her. Those felonies that she was given. And then this happens. Listen to this.
Court today at 4 p.m. was my arraignment. So my arraignment for the indictment of 7 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. At that arraignment, I was served with, before I walked in, I was served with a subpoena that, get this, Brandon, it's from Eric Coomer. Everybody knows who Eric Coomer is, right?
Oh, I love it. She was served with a subpoena for a lawsuit. She's being sued by Eric Coomer. Eric Coomer, I believe, is the CEO of Dominion Voting Systems. He's the guy that sued Mike Lindell and Sidney Powell for lying about their company, claiming they were owned partly by Venezuela and that they tipped elections and blah, 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 whatever else. Eric Coomer is the CEO of that company. All of that stuff is false. So Eric Coomer sued the shit out of Sidney Powell, Mike Lindell, and now Tina Peters.
It's from Eric Coomer. Everybody knows who Eric Coomer is, right? And
well, for those who don't, tell us who he is.
So Eric Coomer is the I won't even call him a gentleman. I will call him Antifa. I will call him Dominion, the one that did the software that he bragged about.
Okay, no. All of that is completely false. She lives in a fantasy land, as usual. She is just living it up in this delusional reality that she's created for herself, or that Donald Trump created for her, and that she, Mike Lindell, and Sidney Powell love to hang out in 24/7. Honestly sad. Deeply sad that she appears to be, like, obsessed with being persecuted when she was literally the one victimizing others, victimizing the people in her district by stealing their private data and giving it out to people. So disgusting, man. So disgusting. Can we expect this kind of behavior for a while, or will people eventually learn that there are consequences for their actions? For people who aren't filthy rich. Can we expect Tina Peters and people like her to continue to rig the system and cheat and leak private data? Or do you think they'll eventually get more hesitant? The reason that it is so important that Trump is charged for the crimes that he's committed is because the next guy in line, the next Republican nominee, or hell, even the next Democratic nominee, sees that they will never charge former presidents of the U.S. for anything that they ever do. They can get away with anything, literally anything. Could literally shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. The next guy in line sees this happening and realizes that he can get away with it scot-free. That's why Trump needs to be charged. That's why Tina Peters needs to be charged. That's why these people need to be charged for the crimes they commit. If they don't, democracy comes to an end, effectively. Are we going to see more stuff like this? Are we going to see people blatantly act in corrupt ways out in the open without worrying about consequences? Or do you guys think we're going to start seeing consequences for actions and less corruption? Let me know what you guys think in the comments or on Twitter @TelltaleAtheist.